Wow, I lost track of time.
That was good. That was about the right length there, Joey.
30 minutes?
That was like 20 to 30 minutes, but I'm
Okay.
not really sure when you actually came back to it.
Yeah.
Actually, so, but yeah.
Well, thank you for listening. My name is Derek. I'm a PhD student here at the Media Lab with Professor Joe Paradiso at the Responsive Environments Group. I've been passionate and obsessed with these wires and cables and knobs and machines. And I was inspired at first because I came to the lab back in 2014 and I saw that gigantic modular synth. I didn't know what it was until I asked my professor, and he was like, "Yes, Don, I built that during my PhD." I was like, "Okay, interesting." And at that time, modular synthesizers were really expensive. It used to be comparable to either a house or a car. Kind of expensive. But he was an electrical engineer, he's an electrical engineer, and he actually built it by himself. And inspired me to follow his lead and start into the modular journey. So what do we have here? We have a couple of modules. Some of them are, assembled, soldered by hand. I got them as kits. Some of them are designed by friends and mentors, such as the Zoxhart by Open Music Lab, Mark Feldmeyer, who reverse engineered the TB303, the legendary acid bassline synth by Roland. So Mark took the heart of that module and created a module out of it for the Eurorack community. And the Eurorack community is made it much cheaper over the years, although it's as DJ equipment, it's pricey stuff, but you take care of your gear over time. And I see something that people fall into really easily when they get into modular is that you just want to fill the rack and buy and buy and buy. And I had that same rack for the past 5 years. I built it quickly at first, but then I started swapping things around. I moved. I had a bigger case. I moved a couple cases, and I found that form factor is as easy for me as bringing a USB to the gig, because as DJs you can bring your USB, you could bring your vinyls, you could bring your modular. I'm also currently exploring this hybrid setup where I could be DJing and at the same time I could be using sounds from the modular, although I prefer to be completely immersed in the live aspect of it. This here is a drum machine, but it's it's like a boutique drum machine by a German company called MFB. It's called the Dance Bear, aka the Dancing Bear. I like it, but I don't like to use it without this processor here. So this is an analog heat by Electron. It actually adds that grunge to the sounds and that distortion. Has filters and all of that stuff. And DJs, when they're transitioning between tracks, essentially you would need at least the minimum of 2 turntables or CDJs. And that's what I thought when I was playing live, is that I need multiple percussion machines. That's why I made my entire modular here to be a hybrid drum machine. So it's a drum machine, but it could be a synth, but it could be an ambient machine, but it could be a sampler. It's just like this chameleon case, really. And I've been really experimenting with different algorithms. For instance, there's something called the Euclidean algorithm, and this is an algorithm that can generate for you sequences for your percussion sounds or any type of sounds, and it will be syncopated. You could create polyrhythms out of it, and it fits into the ethnic rhythms that we are used to. And all you need to do for this algorithm is to give it 2 parameters. You know, if you have a 4/4, for example, you're gonna put, you know, a trig on every 4 in the length is 16. But and you have to do it manually, and then you have to move to second pages, or depending on what digital audio workstation you use. With the Euclidean algorithm, you just set 2 parameters, the step size and the length. What else about this machine? We covered the acid, we covered the phonogene is a sample that I had from a recording of an angel choir, and I like to sometimes chop it, distort it, play it in reverse, and having a voice on your modular that you could CV. The word CV means controlled voltage. So the language of this, it's like programming, but with electricity. So you are really thinking about this as an analog computer, which are actually probably coming back into the scene in this century, surprisingly, for different purposes, but for musical purposes, they've always been there. And the whole idea about this is the immersion of the patching, whether you do it with cables, whether you do it with a computer. There's a great software that I use, that I've been using, called the VCV Rack. This software allows you to immerse yourself into this journey of modular synthesis without paying anything, which is really nice, because you get to try a lot of these modules that are actually digital modules. Some of the awesome modules out there right now are not analog but digital. So whenever someone comes to you about this debate between analog and digital, it's like, hey bro, you know, I want like this analog beefy bass, you know. DSP nowadays, we're miles away. But also I respect the analog because it comes from, the word analog comes from analogical, analogy to nature, and conditioning these signals and thinking about them in that way, whether what's happening inside is digital or analog, at the end of the day, you're getting an analog output, and you're using CV, which means control voltage, to patch. It's like a mathematical game. You have simple tricks here and there. I see a lot of people that use really big cases and get very few sounds out of it. And my challenge was how to compress something into a small case and still be able to experiment and convey a story. Because at the end of the day, you want to express yourself as a musician and as a DJ too. Because I consider these DJs to be also musicians, and most of them at least, their sonic palette, it should be considered a sonic palette rather than a track selection. So that's something I learned the hard way. Instead of, you know, having a compilation of banger tracks that I feel that these are the tracks that are gonna create or break the vibe for me, that's good to have in the back of my mind as you read the crowd and all that stuff that they tell you. But really, if you want to be an artist, you want to think about it as like painting. And Nina here, my partner, she's a painter, and we talk a lot about metaphors between sound and painting and textures and layers and colors. It's very interconnected. And sometimes she paints when I play, and then I see what she paints, and then there's a feedback. So yes, I've been out in the scene DJing in Boston and in Lebanon and Europe as well. That's where I'm from, Lebanon. So I met a lot of friends equally excited about the modular synthesis and synthesizers. I'm on a path of building modules. I built 3 modules so far. My favorite one is a module. As you can see here, my entire case is loaded with these rigid patch cables. So a module that I built in collaboration with a Media Lab friend, an alumni, Joao, is a stretchable patch cable. So you could actually stretch the cable and affect the signal as you're performing. And we only made one cable. It has to come with a specific module to boost the signal, but the vision is to have multiple of them, and then you could like really try to connect with your machine in a different way.
Awesome.
Yeah. Another module that I built in 2018 was I thought about it as the Chromecasts of modular synthesizers, because you plug it in and it connects to the Wi-Fi, and then you could send signals from a browser to your modular, or you could think about it as an infinitely long patch cable. And the emotional connection here that I had with my friend in Lebanon, Junior, who with other friends, Renata, they started a collective called Frequent Defect, and they play modular, and I really wanted to jam with them and play with them, and oceans and distances were a barrier, so we developed that module so we could send signals to each other straight into the modular. Yeah. Please, if you have any questions, happy to answer.
Yeah. Thank you so much for demoing and talking about how you put together your rig. While we do questions, I think Joe, you're going to be DJing next, so you can set up over there. Yeah, you can plug in. But questions for that.
That's a question. Yeah, I'm curious about the stretchable string. Does it stretch back, or is it just like a one-time use?
No, it's stretch.
Oh, okay.
It's like elastic.
Right. You said you have one there?
Not here.
Oh,
I have
okay.
it on the 5th floor.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna.
But soon, hopefully, after I graduate, it probably will hit the market.
Oh, okay.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
You got a good name for it yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
This is the hard part.
Right.
All right.
Can you talk a little bit about reverb?
Reverb.
Reverb.
Yes. So I have used some effects here. Reverb and ping pong delay. There's something that I discovered through experimenting, that connecting all of my sounds to a ping pong delay and just improvising with that, it adds a lot of dynamics in the room and for the whole sound. And sometimes you get, because it's a clock delay, I could like change the clock of the delay, and then it takes you into a different paradigm. And that's why I love like just tweaking like these two knobs, two tiny knobs, very sensitive. It changes the percussion and it changes the clock delay. That's one of my tricks. So thank you.
What would you say is like your favorite unexpected genre combination? Like, let's say you were to do your modular synth set and to bring in one other musical genre to mix, what would you pick?
Another musical genre to this performance, I think.
As like one performance.
Yes, I think I like dark wave. The whole synthwave industrial vibe of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a renaissance of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's some really inspiring groups like Zeno and Oaklander, for example, and Boy Harsher. I'd love to get to that level with my art, while at the same time keeping it towards industrial techno.
Yeah.
Having like a mixture of both.
Do you only play live, or do you also like record tracks?
I DJ, I produce. Recently I also did a score for a short film. And yes, I'm very interested in the whole aspect of sound and art and audio.
Can we find your work on like platform or something?
Yes,
Yeah.
well, there's my Instagram account, and I'll get your contact. I can send you my film later on. Thank you.
If we search for this 9D3, will we
On Instagram, it's 93_live.
Hmm. 93 live.